What's up, marketing legends, and welcome to another episode of the Growth Colony podcast. I'm producer Liza from X Growth to tell you that each episode we bring in B2B leaders to chat about how you can achieve those everyday wins in the marketing world. Whether you're new to the B2B game, working at a leadership level, or even just showing some interest, we know you'll love the episode. So wherever you are, get comfy and enjoy the show.
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Growth Colony. I'm Shahin with X Growth, and today I'm thrilled to welcome Corey Morris, the founder of Voltage and the author of the Digital Marketing Success Plan. Corey has been in the digital marketing space for nearly 20 years and brings a wealth of experience when it comes to SEO, paid search, and a lot more in this space. In his book, he introduces the framework called START, a structured 5-step approach to developing a digital marketing plan that drives measurable ROI. And we thought that this is a great chance to have a chat to him at the beginning of the year for people who are putting their plans together of how to do that. We're going to unpack this framework. We're going to explore how businesses can navigate the complexity of digital marketing, especially with everything that is happening with AI. Corey, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure. So let's dive in. I want to start with the START framework. And if you could maybe a little bit unpack that for us for, the high level view of what are the key components and what goes in there, I think that would be a great starting point for this chat.
Yeah. So basically, there's a much longer story to this. Being an agency owner, agencies love to come up with their own frameworks and secret sauce and act like we have something that nobody else has. But and we had a very complicated process for how we would walk clients through developing their own digital marketing plan or getting their strategy in place. And so we had a very complicated process. We had a lot of parts and pieces, but I challenged my team and we worked through a process of getting our own process into 5 steps and make it as approachable as possible. Planning, there are a number of reasons why, and we can get into those as we go, but planning is critically important to setting all of your goals, your strategy and measurables to set you up either for the year or whatever time period that you want to measure it against and see return on investment. The heart of the whole thing is ROI. And so I had a chance to get it organized and put it into my new book called The Digital Marketing Success Plan. The ultimate goal is for everyone who, whether they read it or come to us and we help them walk through it, is to get to their own digital marketing success plan. So START is the 5-step framework that we've distilled down to get there. So it's an acronym, naturally, because I can't leave the marketing side of me at home. So 5 steps are start with strategy, and that is understanding what we're trying to do here and not just map out, what our marketing's always been or what we want it to be or the activities that make it up, but to understand what ultimately our business outcomes are that we can map our marketing KPIs to and have influence over. And so this is getting your house in order and understanding what are we even doing here and to get stakeholders aligned around that as well. And to not overcomplicate what our strategy is and what our ultimate goal is. So there's a mixture of auditing and different activities we do to understand where we stand now, but it's a lot of vision and forward thinking to where do we want to be and how can we have the deepest impact on our business or organization. So strategy is critically important here at the start because everything else in the other 4 steps cascades down from that. So the second step is tactics. And this is a big deal to put this after strategy because unfortunately, if strategy is not fully fleshed out or not understood or not ever fully defined, tactics get in the way and tactics are noisy. They're the things we do, what we implement, what we've always done. Or, I often question well, why are you writing those 4 blog posts a month and doing 7 social media posts a week? Or why are you just doing these things to build links or to optimize meta tags or whatever it might be in SEO? Well, it's because those are best practices or those are the things we've always done or that's what guru, XYZ said to do. And And that's where I push in to challenge that, because if we don't have a lens of our strategy and goals, then what's the point of just doing activity and spending time, money, or effort into something if we don't understand how it's going to connect the dots all the way through? So it also allows us to challenge some of our biases. Maybe we love LinkedIn. Maybe we hate social media. Maybe we don't want to do certain marketing channels because they're not in my personal wheelhouse as the CMO or VP of marketing or marketing coordinator or whatever, or business owner. So in those cases, it allows us to really put all the tactics, all the potential channels, networks, platforms on the table, and to do some research to understand if our target audience is there. Much like in strategy and tactics, we can also expose if we've got a problem with definition of our brand or product development or sales or other things too, if we can't answer all the questions or don't have all the inputs. So at this point, we've got strategy, we've got tactics. Now we move into what I call application. This is looking at all the assets that you have, everything from messaging to flights of ads to even your biggest asset for digital marketing, which is your website. Where are you sending people? How are you engaging them once you get them here? If they're doing what you want in your strategy and then following through, finding you through your tactics, do you have the assets to engage with them at whatever point in that journey? This is not the time to go in and create new assets, but it's at least to inventory and understand and plan them out. So that way you're not surprised when you have this beautiful plan that you want to implement, and then you realize you're missing a lot of the things you need to actually create it and implement it. The next is review. I don't call this reporting on purpose. I call it review because it's deeper and more complex than just making sure that you've got GA4 set up or connections to your CRM or whatever it might be, or your online store. This is making sure that you can measure everything all the way through to ROI. By default, and in many cases, it's challenging to get to, dashboards and reporting platforms and things out of the box don't take into account anything beyond, ad spend or things like that. They don't understand what your investment is in people, or your investment is in software or other resources. And so they can't give you that holistic ROI picture. And oftentimes, if you don't capture that along the way, you can't go get that data back. So there's nothing worse than doing something for 6 months and not realizing or being able to connect the dots on whether it worked or not. So getting your house in order when it comes to reporting and review, and tracking systems to be able to measure that all the way through. And then the final step is the T, which is for transformation, the second T. And this is where it all comes together. This is where we're mapping out our tactics in a timeline. This is where we're setting intervals for when we'll revisit the plan and look at reporting. This is where we make sure that the resources that we need are in place, because in many cases, we're dependent as digital marketers, or if we're in a specific channel that we love, like SEO. It's a great example because SEO is dependent on a lot of people that don't have SEO in their title, like developers or content writers or people who need to approve things, or legal and compliance if you're in a regulated industry and can only say things certain ways, and making sure that you have a plan that doesn't fall apart. It's funny because occasionally you'll have a great plan and then find out that resource is now out on paternal leave for 3 months or whatever, and then it falls apart, and to make sure that it's not something that will get put on the shelf when things get busy or big distractions happen 2 months into it or whatnot either. So that's the framework itself. That's the short version of unpacking the 5 steps that I go through in the book.
I love it. I want to start with the strategy phase, and I think this ties in not only the strategy phase but potentially the review component as well, where in the book you kind of highlight the importance of aligning marketing metrics and business goals. I'm first curious, where have you seen companies go wrong with this? Right? Where are the areas that you've seen the most common misalignments between marketing and business goals?
Yeah, there's some great examples that come to mind. Probably the most common one is, for whatever reason, not being aligned or connected to an end goal. And it's probably the most painful one for me when I'm on the agency side. And I've learned this lesson the hard way over the years of thinking that seeing all the marketing KPIs green, or graphs that are up and to the right, and looking and being like, we're driving so much traffic, we have these conversions, and then finding out later that marketing is getting cut or the business is having trouble because it really wasn't moving the needle on a business outcome, or the sales team was struggling, those leads weren't qualified and we weren't getting feedback, or it wasn't just getting all the way through to what was driving the business's growth, or it wasn't. And so it in essence was a lot of activity and a lot of fluff when you look at the KPIs, because they didn't have substance behind them. And that was one of the biggest disconnects. In fact, it's the very first story. I have a bunch of stories where I changed names so I could be very transparent in the book. But the first story, the very personal one for me, where a lot of this clicked for me early in my career, was around going into a meeting with an attorney, having everything up and to the right, and getting through presenting the report to him, and him saying, "That's great. I see all this. I see the effort, but it didn't move the needle at all for my business because I didn't get a single case, even though I got those 20 conversions or whatever that came in." And it's a gut-wrenching thing when you think everything's going great and then the business tells you it's not, or someone at some level, even outside of marketing, tells you that it's not, and to find that out the hard way.
Yeah, I remember. I definitely have had that experience before, and it's very eye opening. And usually, you have it early. Well, hopefully, you have it early in your career, where somebody, just like you said, it's usually it's someone who's very blunt, doesn't have time for sugarcoating things, and they're like, "Great, the effort is fantastic, but this doesn't do it for me." That's a really good point. Well, how can marketers avoid that?
Yeah, I think this is the part that's hard. And my team, I'm not saying they love it, and I would say that, whether I have a client listening or not, but I'm not saying that they love getting into the client's mess, or problem solving in things that are outside of marketing. It's easier to stay in a silo, or to stay, especially I'm an agency, so I'm on the, I have another wall of separation, and stay on my side of the wall and say, "Well, you guys can't figure it out. It's not my problem. I'm doing my job." But again, as I mentioned a minute ago, I still may get fired anyway, even when I think I'm doing a good job and can justify everything I'm doing with what I have. But there are silos in organizations, massive organizations, where we've started asking some of the business questions, and even almost had to stop to not embarrass, a high-ranking marketing person who doesn't know the answer. And it's not their fault. It's, a lot of it is the way that hierarchy and silos are in their organization. And in other cases, we get into that strategy phase and start having some kickoff calls or meetings, and sit down, and it's 5 people are using the same kind of industry lingo and jargon or company culture language, but they mean 5 different things. So until we really press them on definition, or get it out of them of what success absolutely looks like and how to validate that, sometimes we can all say and hear things like we're speaking the same language, and find out later that we were not speaking the same language at all. And we wasted a lot of money to find that out when somebody finally, calls it out down the road. So there are a number of different messes and things that a lot of people in-house, and even agencies or other outside partners, don't want to mess with, because it's ugly sometimes. There's politics. There's a lot of different challenges with that. Or it's the easy answer is to say, to get someone from leadership or the C-suite or a high-level decision maker in the room, so they have visibility to it and buy-in on it, to make it easy later on. But in many cases, to your point a moment ago, sometimes those people don't want to be in the room and don't want to give it the time of day, or get into the weeds with you, or rub everybody the wrong way and put a cloud over the meeting because no one wants to speak up with their presence there because of the clout that they carry, in it either negative or a positive way, and it's intimidating. So there are a lot of reasons, but those are a handful that I see probably the most often, that unfortunately, if not addressed as an elephant in the room, or even just acknowledged, you can go through a lot of processes and marketing, and then find out later that you were not on the same page.
I really like what you just said there, where you said you have to get into the mess. And whether it's the mess of the client or it's the mess of the other departments that you're dependent on, I really like that statement, because I feel like you're very right. Where if you just say, "This is my responsibility and this is what I'm doing," and hey, I did my job, it just doesn't cut. It doesn't cut it. And getting into the mess is where and being super passionate about getting results is very critical. You have a very strong background in AI. Sorry, in digital. That's probably not my strongest suit in marketing, where I come from, more of the enterprise and ABM side of things. But we do SEO for our own agency, and one of the things that, or even digital marketing as a whole, one of the things that it's really on my radar, and I would bet is on a lot of people's radar, is the rise of AI and these language models. And what does that mean for digital marketing and SEO? And I know that in certain situations, I've stopped getting suggestions from Google, and I have started getting suggestions from, whether it's ChatGPT. Suggestions, search is mainly for me is ChatGPT. I might be using Claude and Perplexity, and recently Gemini a little bit, but really, like, if I want to ask for recommendations, it's usually ChatGPT, right? So I'm very curious to hear your thoughts of, how do we rethink? Do we need to rethink SEO? How do we rethink SEO and digital marketing with all these things that are happening in the past, 1 or 2 years, really?
That's an excellent question. So, yeah, it's definitely changing, and I've been challenged by some colleagues who own other agencies who, when they heard a couple of years ago that we were niching down and focusing heavily on search and websites, they're like, "Huh, under that digital marketing umbrella, you're really going all in on SEO and along with paid search." And in this very disruptive period. Well, one, the constant in SEO specifically, which is where my career started, has been change, and it's been declared dead. I don't know how many times when different things happen, from when Google took away keyword data in Google Analytics, to when social media emerged, to voice assistants and smart speakers and all of that, and it's adapted. Now, whether this is the time it actually dies or not, and we move into something else, and there's all kinds of other acronyms coming around, and people are trying to coin for optimizing for how to be found in AI results or whatnot. I embrace it. We've been dependent on Google for a long time. We talk about Google almost in a synonymous way with SEO, and the trend for Google sending us less traffic and zero traffic searches happening actually started before AI and even before COVID. I was in an event in Portland presenting some research, and in a different session, Rand Fishkin spoke and was already sharing trending data. He's sharing a lot of it nowadays, but showing trending data back then, showing less clicks coming through and less traffic from Google itself, and sending up alarm signals and bells then. So I've embraced it. My team has embraced it. We leverage it. I leverage AI tools, but AI has become one of these, it's 2 letters, but it's understood a lot of different ways by a lot of people, right? It's built into so many of the things that software and systems that we use daily, whether it's a smart device or software that we're using to do our jobs. We can use it natively ourselves, right? Like in ChatGPT or the other platforms you mentioned, to try to increase our productivity or ideation, or to even have it do things for us, or whether we're building agents or whatever we're doing. Or we can use it as a consumer or on the business or personal side, as we go to Google or any other service that might be leveraging it. I mean, I don't know, I get so pissed off in the McDonald's drive-thru, or in McDonald's and Wendy's here in the States. A couple of the locations in my area were using it to take my order and doesn't understand anything, or it's trying to add 12 of something. And I'm like, want to sit there. I didn't want to be there to begin with, but it's a quick meal between things. And anyway, I'm screaming that I want an agent. I want somebody to come on the speaker, or I got to fix the whole order at the windows. Right. So all those examples of slop that we see, which is the technical term, right, for bad AI information. But as it continues to evolve, I look at ways that it can be an extension of me, my thinking, my team, There are scary things, aspects of it too, but I mean, there are things that it solved things that 2 years ago I was seeking out a virtual assistant to help me with, just to expand my time or production abilities or research abilities. And so what's really cool is it's done a lot of that. But on the flip side, when it comes to digital marketing and disruption there, while it can help us scale and do things and ideate faster when it comes to content research and content calendars or even just analyzing data sets for us, we have to be prepared for a more diversified experience, especially in search. So if Google is not the number one source or continues to lose market share, and there are different sources that our target audience will find us through, we have to be present where they are so we can be found. So in many cases, for a number of years, your persona development and research and understanding your buyer and customer journey has been, a big part of what you base a lot of your marketing decisions on. I argue that we've got to go even a step further and know where they are. And like 5 or 10 years ago, it'd be like, well, duh, they're in these 3 places. We can see them. We can draw a line to attribution of where they came from. That 0.5% that came from all the other 20 sources combined, we're not worried about, because the big 2 or 3 sources, whether it's that search engine or social media platform or a combination of both, great. We're just going to work toward those. But I embrace the diversification of traffic sources because it's going to make us be smarter and work on quality and not quantity, and not just cast a big net out there and throw a bunch of content out there and hope it sticks or works in every channel. Those who will be able to find and understand where their audience is, and as it continues to evolve potentially rapidly, and be able to present content to their target audience and be found in those sources, will win.
I want to again touch on this topic because I think there's a little bit to unpack there, and I'm very keen to hear your thoughts. Would you say I'll say one of my very recent experiences where on Google Maps, we were booking a hotel, on Google Maps, found a hotel. It's like, yeah, this looks good rating, good ranking, yada, yada, yada. But then I went to ChatGPT and I put a whole range of criteria. I was like, we're going over here. This is the time period. I want somewhere that is not super high end. Don't want to pay premium prices, but I need it to be child friendly. I want it to be close to the beach. Da, 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 da. Give me 5 options in that area, not even town, in that suburb. And it goes do. And I go, I like this, I like that, I don't like this, I don't think this is a good fit. Optimize your list again. Right? Gives me 5 options. And then I use Google. I was like, let me look at the ratings, right? And then go ahead and purchase. So, and we did purchase one of the recommendations that ChatGPT offered. So my question is, for that level of optimization, is it that we just have to take the SEO principles of good content and then not hope, this is not the right word, but I'm just going to say it for now because I can't think of a better word, but hope for the LLMs to pick it up and for us to be mentioned in these? Or has there been a playbook developed for, how do I make sure that I'm present on, the LLM's radar? What are your thoughts on that? Is that something that's been developed or not really? There hasn't still been anything that, it's robust enough that it's come out?
I appreciate this question because I write for Search Engine Land and Search Engine Journal. So naturally, I'm hooked into their content coming to me as well. So I'm watching everything that our colleagues are writing as well. And as I see it on those sources, they've got some great, there's a lot of research and data, but even the people that I trust that are on the cutting edge of this, there's still a blend of speculation and testing with some very narrowly focused examples of what they found that works. I laughed the other day talking to my team because I'm like, we saw a question where someone's like, well, they were paranoid and were blocking the, AI search functions or engines or, LLMs from seeing their content. And I laughed. And realized after I laughed about it, my team's like, well, what's funny about that? I'm like, well, why would you want to do that if you want to be found? And then we got into some very nuanced, they came up with 3 examples of very nuanced industries and use cases where you might want to block it. And I thought that's interesting. And so this is way more complex than just a blanket strategy or set of best practices. And this is very specific, at least where we are today, to the source and a lot of trial and error and testing. And so the way to get really get an understanding and to feed the LLMs is to manually work with them yourselves and understand, what would be in there. So if I was one of those hotels in your example, I would hopefully be either at, if it's a local hotel or at a chain level or whatever in between, understanding all the different ways that prompts can bring back and retrieve my result, and understanding how to feed and get the information in there. And so there right now, a lot of consensus is still to do what works well for SEO. And there's some, I won't say correlation is the wrong word because we can't tie it together. And some of the studies say it's way different. But for now, keep watching what's happening and how it's evolving and what people and the research and data that's developing, while also doing what works today, and find a hybrid approach to that. What I will say with absolute conviction is that you can't fall into either extreme of of one of those camps of only experimenting and chasing the shiny object and getting lost and losing sight of what works today. But at the same time, you can't focus so much on what works today and not have some intentional set aside time to experiment, to read, to research on your own and understand what's to come and how you can apply it today. You've got to find a happy medium balance. And in some cases, you may have to structure your day around a balance of both.
You talked about tactics being the second step. And in your book, you talk a little bit about, how many businesses jump straight to tactics, and we touched on this chat as well. Tell me a little bit about what are the risks that you've seen when people jump into tactics, and maybe we expand a little bit on what you mentioned earlier, and what happens when you don't have a very robust strategy and you go to step number 2.
Yeah, so if you are just doing, I've called this checklist SEO essentially in a couple of articles I've written, where you can be doing good and right things, following best practices and doing the things, but in the absence of a strategy, what are you optimizing for and what is the outcome you want to get to? So I talked plenty earlier about connecting to business outcomes and goals, but by having a list of tactics, especially if you can't justify the what and why connected back to a strategy, it's like, why, what are we doing here and why? In many cases, it happens in organizations because it was inherited from the previous marketing person, or it was the way that we've always done it, which I mentioned earlier too. But we just brought on a new client back in the fall and worked through the digital marketing success plan process with them to develop their plan. But before I even got into talking about the process, I could see in the first 3 minutes of our conversation that they didn't have a strategy, or if the agency that was handling it before didn't articulate it, at least when the new marketing manager came in, who I'm now talking to. So she's like, I don't know why we're doing this number of posts a week and why we're writing these blog posts. And in fact, half of them that come over aren't even right. And I have to rewrite them, or we have to go back and forth. And she's like, first off, why are we even doing them, let alone? And so that aspect in the strategy phase of getting on the same page is critical, because there's conviction then by the entire team of what we're doing and why and how it connects to something bigger. Again, you could be doing all the right tactics and you could get lucky or get some wins in some areas where, they drove some activity, maybe some engagement, maybe drove some conversions if you're in a less competitive industry maybe than others. But doing tactics in absence of a strategy is a challenge. And one of the stories I also have in the book too is a client who came to me, who they're getting their report every month, a paid search report. They're having a conversation with the person at that agency who is managing it. And each month they're thinking, well, I don't see these keywords in here in our targeting. Well, what about trying these keywords or this topic or that set? And after 3 or 4 months of that, they're like, and that person's like, that's a good idea, I'll incorporate it. Well, after 3 or 4 months of that, they're like, well, wait a minute, we don't have a strategy here. Who's driving it? It was the client in that case. So like, we're driving it and they're just reacting to it. And it raises some alarms on other areas of like, what's in our best interest? What's the who, what, and when, where, and why, and how behind what we're doing, versus just throw stuff at the wall. Now it's tempting and it's dangerous to have a plan and out for the year and to just blindly run the plan. So I'm going to contradict myself or challenge myself for a minute here because what the nature of a lot of digital things that we do is optimization. So, but it's also lazy and easy to say, well, it's optimization. We're going to optimize and figure it out as we go, to just launch it without a fully fleshed out strategy, because it's really expensive to go test and learn in market if it's not the right set of tactics, because Google will take your money, Facebook will take your money, LinkedIn will take your money, whether it's working or not. And there's no refunds. So that's where finding that right line of enough planning and strategy to guide the tactics, but leave yourself room to test and optimize within that plan too.
Can you give me an example of maybe a client of yours or maybe an organization that you've seen of a really well structured plan being executed?
Yeah. The beauty of having a well-structured plan and getting through the process is that we've got visibility and conviction behind it. And so before it was called the digital marketing success plan, before I put my spin on it, but we were doing it. I didn't realize till I went through this a few years ago. I worked through many of the barriers and made some of the same mistakes that now I'm calling out and shining a flashlight on. In the first couple of years of the relationship, we were making progress and seeing results, but it was an uphill battle because they were disorganized. They didn't have sales team using CRM the way it was intended or alignment with marketing on that. Legal and compliance was scared of any social media content or engagement. Their email platform and list, we didn't have segments and didn't understand how to further leverage it or what people were opening or why, or what content they wanted. Paid search seemed to be driving some things, but we couldn't, again, get real-time feedback or any feedback from the sales team on what a good lead was versus a bad one. We got to a point where we were able to get that whole thing organized. We actually learned we became the keepers of their CRM because no one else did. So we got in Dynamics and helped customize it and get it configured and get everything aligned because we knew it was in our best interest. And the only way we were going to be able to move marketing forward and increase our partnership with them. What we ultimately got to was things organized in a way that we wrote a plan. We did it in different chunks. We didn't do it in a 60 or 90 day sprint like I like to do now when we start, pun intended. But we ended up over different phases or cycles getting to a point where we had a plan and then ultimately being able to do it on annual cycles. And it worked beautifully years in. And so had I had this framework back then, we would have saved 2 or 3 years of making 2 steps forward and 1 step back in all of our efforts. But that client had pretty much 5 of the 7 different things of the challenges of where it can go off the rails or go wrong. And I'm thankful that we were committed to each other to figure it out and make it work along the way. So we all had the time and space to do so.
We did talk about AI a little bit. I want to just wrap this up. This is my last question before we do some rapid fire questions. Kind of looking ahead, what do you see the role of AI and automation when it comes to shaping the future of digital marketing? How do you have a thought or opinion? I mean, we touched on it a fair bit, but I don't know if there's anything else that you want to add in there in terms of what would be coming and what are some of the changes that you see ahead?
Well, I can tell you that anyone who is not keeping up, and I say this as even colleagues who are on the cutting edge of it, developing AI-based custom software to solve problems for their industry, feel like they're behind. We all feel like we're behind, and there's an imposter syndrome is off the charts when it comes to AI compared to other things in business and in marketing and in life. So we're all behind. But if you actually get left behind and we hit a point where it's hard to keep up, I mean, I think about this generationally as my kids are playing video games on tablets, and I'm thinking about the console games I played and still play and things like that too. And generational gap. So if you get behind and it feels like you lost or can't catch up, it's going to be a challenge. But the good news is everybody feels like they're behind someone else, or we're all feeling that pressure. So it's not too late, but it definitely will shape our world for better or worse, right? Whether the bots take over or whether we just increase productivity to a point that is unimaginable today. if we go 10 years, 20 years in the future. It will reinvent a lot of different things, whether it's, different ad technologies or ways that we engage. There will be a lot of love-hate relationship. I mean, if my refrigerator is going to reorder groceries for me and detect when we're out of milk, but somebody left the milk out and it's not smart enough, and I have 5 gallons of milk show up at my house, then I'm in, it's going to be worse in some cases before it gets better. But there's a lot of opportunity coming to do things that takes so much time today that will be, a snap of the fingers and that result or that thing is done. Not just give me the information back, but to actually just go book that hotel without, and then tell me when, what time to get in the car, and it's driving me there. So a lot of those things are coming, and then we've got to understand them. We don't have to like them, but we have to understand them and make sure that we don't get left behind in leveraging them.
Love it. Corey, let's do some rapid fire questions before we wrap up. First question I have is, what is one resource? This could be a book, a podcast, a blog, a talk, whatever it is, that has had a pretty profound impact on you in the past 3 to 6 months.
Yeah. So it's agency specific, and I'll go a little bit further than 3 to 6 months because I read it a couple of years ago, but in the past year, I've put it all into play. It's called Sell with Authority. It's by Drew McClellan and Stephen Wessner. It's targeted toward agencies and agency owners about finding your authority position and niching and building cornerstone content and niching down from there. But the concepts are applicable to any type of business, not just agencies, in terms of finding, do you want to be the specialist doctor, or do you want to be the general practitioner? Do you want to be the full service and do the wide spectrum, or do you want to charge a premium and be that one thing? And for me, it was about being the specialist and not being spread thin. And so many, here in the States, Fortune 500 companies get spread too thin every day and lose customers. I mean, I think about telecom. I think about all kinds of different companies who try to do too many things and don't do it well.
I love it. I got to check that out. If you could give one advice to B2B marketers, what would it be?
I'm going to double down on what I said earlier about know where your audience is, and not just where they are today, but to understand where they're going tomorrow and how they're finding information. How quickly are they adopting AI, and where are they now, and where are they going, and where are they going to be?
Love it. Who are some of the influencers that you follow, Corey?
Yeah, because of where the marketplace is going when it comes to search and digital marketing, I find myself often in my LinkedIn news feed seeing the same people over and over because I'm bombing them to the top of the algorithm by engaging with them. But people like Rand Fishkin, who I mentioned earlier, or Will Reynolds, or Michael King, who are doing a lot of the experiments and a lot of the data and research and openly sharing what they're finding and the results with how search is working and where it's going in AI too.
Last one. So what's something that excites you about B2B today?
I love the challenge in every unique situation. Now, while not every, but many of the clients that I engage with think that they have a one-off unique situation and problem to solve. And I get to come in and gracefully share with them that I've seen this before, or this is like one of 7 common challenges. Maybe it's unique where it has your brand and your flavor to it, but this can be solved and we can work through this. So the varying nature of what starting point I have in any conversation with an organization and helping them see the light in many ways of how this problem can be solved or how to navigate it is exciting to me.
Corey, this has been an awesome conversation. Just want to say thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, no, I've enjoyed it. And likewise, thanks for having me.
Today's episode of Growth Colony was produced by Liza Maywald and Alexander Hipwell. It was edited by Dave Samito with additional editing by Liza Maywald and music arrangement by Liza and Alexander. Special thanks to Tina Wabe. We couldn't make this show without you. This episode was hosted by Shahin Hoda, Director of Growth at Xgrowth. If you enjoyed the podcast, please subscribe and give us a rating on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. If you'd like to know more about Growth Colony, check out our newsletter and subscribe with the link in the pod description. Do you think you'd be a great guest or just interested in a chat? Send through an email at podcast@xgrowth.com.au. That's podcast@xgrowth.com.au. or fill out the form in the description. That's all for now. We'll catch you next week right here on Growth Colony.